I just got my energy bill and they are doubling our monthly payment. And so it's going from, I guess it's not quite doubling, then probably being dramatic, but it's going from $292 a month to $445 a month, which is a lot.
31 an hour working in a call center. 70% of I take home about $2,300.
Have you ever wondered why are you working more, but the money in your account is disappearing faster? A normal life is becoming more and more of a luxury. A small house, a car to get to work, a good meal with your family, some savings for the future. Things that used to be considered basic are now forcing millions of people to sit down and crunch the numbers. But the one thing that does not seem to be rising fast enough is wages. And the scariest part is this: a lot of people have cut almost everything they possibly can, but they still feel like they cannot breathe. In this video, I'm going to show you why the cost of living crisis in America is worse than it looks. Things are truly getting beyond your own control. Watch until the end of the video and you will realize that America is not the only country facing a cost of living crisis. I have noticed something pretty interesting. People still call America the land of opportunity, a place where working hard is supposed to give you a stable life. But the more I watch the news and read what Americans themselves are saying, the more I see the same question coming up. Why in the world is everything so expensive? It sounds like a complaint, but when people from every walk of life keep asking the same thing, from single adults to families with young children, then maybe this is no longer just how a few people feel. Honestly, his last line really stuck with me. If anybody knows why everything's so expensive, please tell me. It sounds like a question and a sigh at the same time. What stands out is that he never mentions a new phone and a luxury car or anything extravagant. He only talks about a beef rent, insurance, and property and taxes. The kinds of bills you have to pay almost every month just to maintain a normal life. It feels like in America today you do not have to spend recklessly. All you have to do is wake up every morning and keep living your regular life, and the bills are already lined up waiting for you. There is a contradiction here that I think is worth thinking about. In the past, people tried to make more money so they could have a better life. Now, a lot of people are also working more, putting in more overtime, and taking on extra jobs, but their goal is simply to maintain the same standard of living they had last year. It sounds a little ironic, but when rent goes up, food goes up, insurance goes up, utilities go up, and nearly every living expense goes up, a small increase in income sometimes does not make any noticeable difference in your life. Maybe that is why one number really caught my attention. The personal savings rate in America has fallen to its lowest level in years. I do not think a single indicator can tell us everything about the economy. But it does raise a very simple question for me. If life is really getting better, why are more and more people running out of money to save? Maybe the problem is not just how much people earn, but how much they have to spend to maintain a life that used to be considered completely normal. After watching that whole clip, the thing that stayed with me most was not the amount of money. That mother was not talking about buying something expensive or wanting a luxurious life. What she regretted was having to give up another day with her children simply because everything had become too expensive. Some expenses do not just take money out of your account. They also take away time with your family. And maybe that is the kind of cost of living that is very hard to see on a statistical chart. In the past, people often talked about the American dream as a symbol of a stable life and the chance to move up. Now, sometimes I feel like that dream has been scaled down to a much more realistic goal, still having enough money in the account at the end of the month to pay every bill. It sounds a little sarcastic, but when simply maintaining a normal life keeps getting more expensive, then maybe this is no longer just a story about prices. And that is only the tip of the iceberg. In the next part, we are going to look at the most essential expenses and see what is pushing the cost of living in America further and further out of control. Think about it. When was the last time your family had a truly relaxed cookout outside? A week ago? A month ago? Or has it been so long that you cannot even remember? A weekend afternoon, a few pieces of grilled meat, some drinks, and the whole family sitting in the yard enjoying time together. That sounds pretty normal, right? But for more and more American families today, things that used to be a normal part of life are turning into expenses they have to think twice about. And if you are cutting back on things like that too, do not think you are the only one. A lot of people are doing the same thing. The problem is not that everyone suddenly decided they wanted to live extremely frugally. The problem is that the cost of maintaining a normal life keeps rising every day. You can skip buying a new car, you can keep your old phone, you can skip a vacation. But there is one thing you cannot skip, and that is food. And this is becoming one of the expenses causing the biggest headaches for many families. According to the data mentioned, food prices in America are still about 3% higher than they were a year ago. But what matters even more is the impact behind that number. Some surveys show that about 10% of the households surveyed said they did not have enough food to meet their children's needs, and many people have had to turn to food banks or assistance programs like SNAP to make ends meet. I think this is where the story becomes more serious. When someone stops eating out to save money, that is a choice. But when a family has to stand in a grocery store and calculate every item in the cart, figuring out which one is cheaper and which one they can put back, that is no longer just shopping, that is pressure. And the way people are responding to this situation is very clear. Many say they only buy what they truly need, switch to cheaper store brands, shop for discounted items and buy in bulk to save money. Some are eating out less, sharing housing with other people sharing a car or working more hours. At first those sound like ordinary money-saving tips, but there is something pretty bitter about it that I have noticed. In the past, minimalism was a choice. You wanted fewer things and a simpler life. But now, for many people, minimalism is no longer a lifestyle. It is how they survive. And once people have cut everything they can cut, the next problem shows up: savings. The personal savings rate in America fell from about 5.8% to 3.2%, then dropped again to 2.6%. They sound like just a few numbers, but behind them is a pretty troubling reality. Savings are not just extra money. That is the money you need when your car breaks down, when you get sick, when you lose your job, or when something unexpected happens. As that emergency cushion gets smaller, more people start relying on credit cards, personal loans, or buy now, pay later plans. And this is the part that makes me think the most. In the past, many people used credit to buy things they wanted. Now some people are using it to pay for things they need. And when a society has to cut even its smallest pleasures just to maintain daily life, maybe the bigger question is no longer how much people are saving. The question is, how much does a life considered normal in America cost today? Imagine an ordinary American family. Both spouses work, both have steady jobs, they do not buy designer brands, they do not spend recklessly, and they are not the kind of people who go to restaurants or take expensive trips every weekend. They just want a fairly simple life, pay the rent or mortgage by enough, take care of their children, and have a little money saved in case something unexpected happens. That sounds like a very basic goal, right? But the problem is that more and more American families are realizing that even a life like this is becoming much harder to maintain. What frustrates so many people is not that they are not trying. They still go to work every day, still look for ways to earn more, and still try to manage their spending. But the general feeling is that wages are not keeping up with the rising costs of life's basic necessities. Rent goes up, food goes up, insurance goes up, healthcare goes up, and almost every month another expense shows up and stretches the family budget even tighter. And that is not all. This is the interesting part you do not want to miss. Maybe you have noticed the same thing as this guy. Am I right? Because in the past, a $20 burger sounded like something far off in the future. But now a lot of people walk into a fast food restaurant, look at the bill and think, wait, did the thing we used to worry about already happen? Of course, prices do not rise because of just one cause. Many factors affect production costs, operating costs, and retail prices. But what people feel most clearly is that the gap between income and the cost of living is getting wider. Fast food used to be considered a cheap and convenient option. But now, even that can make people stop and think before buying it. And when wages do not leave enough breathing room, savings are the first thing to take the hit. The personal savings rate in America has fallen significantly lately from about 5.8% to 3.2%, then down again to 2.6%. That may not sound like a huge drop, but behind it is a very clear reality. More and more people have less money left over to put away for the future. Savings are not just money for buying something big. It is the money you use to fix the car when something goes wrong, cover costs when you get sick, or protect yourself if you lose your job or face an emergency. As that money gets smaller, more people start turning to options they used to avoid, such as credit cards, personal loans, or even withdrawals from retirement accounts. And this is the part that worries me most. A 401k account is supposed to be money for the future, something many people try to protect so they can have a stable life in retirement. But now more and more people are withdrawing from it to deal with today's problems such as living expenses, medical bills, or debt. Put simply, they are using tomorrow's money to solve today's problems. And that is a cycle that is very hard to escape. When everything gets more expensive at the same time, from food and insurance to furniture and everyday necessities, people do not just lose the ability to buy big things like homes or cars. They slowly lose their sense of security. The biggest concern is not that a family has to skip a meal out or cut a few entertainment expenses. The real concern is that after giving up everything that is not truly necessary, many people still have to ask themselves, what else can I cut? And when more and more families start asking that question, this is no longer just a story about how people spend money. It is becoming a sign that financial pressure in America has worked its way much deeper into everyday life. There is one question I think a lot of young Americans are asking themselves right now. When will I finally be able to buy my first home? It does not have to be a big mansion, it does not need a huge yard or a swimming pool. Sometimes all people want is a stable place to live, a kitchen where they can cook a bedroom for their children, and the feeling that they are truly building a life of their own. But the problem is that the gap between that dream and reality keeps getting wider. For many years, owning a home was considered an important part of the American dream. People believed that as long as you worked hard, saved money, and had a steady job, you would eventually reach that goal one step at a time. But now, a lot of people are realizing that this formula is no longer as simple as it used to be. Home prices in America have risen to a level that is making many people rethink whether they can afford to buy one. The median sale price of a home in America is now more than $400,000 US, while just a few years ago, that number was much lower. A home that used to feel like an achievable goal for working people has now become a massive investment that can take decades to prepare for. Let us look at a simple example. A manager in America might earn around $60,000 to $100,000 US a year depending on the industry and their experience. That sounds like a pretty good income, but that is before taxes. After taxes, rent, food insurance, gas, and monthly bills are taken out, there's not nearly as much money left to save as the people might think. Let us say a home costs $400,000 US. To make a 20% down payment, the buyer would need about $80,000 US in cash. For someone who can save $500 US a month, it would take more than 13 years just to come up with the down payment. And that is assuming nothing changes. They do not have young children, they do not have any health problems, and the cost of living does not keep rising. A lot of people will say, if you do not have enough money, just get a loan from the bank. That is true, most Americans buy homes with long-term loans. But what many people do not realize is that the price of the home is only part of the story. A 30-year loan with an interest rate of around 6 to 7% can make the total amount paid much higher than the original price. A home that costs $400,000 US could end up costing the homeowner hundreds of thousands of US dollars in interest over the life of the loan. And that is just the loan. Homeowners also have to pay property taxes, insurance, repairs, and maintenance. A damaged roof, a broken air conditioning system, or an unexpected repair bill can throw a family budget into chaos overnight. But what happens if you do not buy a home? Renting is not any easier. In many major cities like Los Angeles, Boston, and New York, rent for a one-bedroom apartment can reach several thousand US dollars a month. Because of that, more and more young people are delaying living on their own, staying with their parents longer, or sharing a home with several other people to lower their expenses. What really makes me think is that this problem is not just about whether someone can buy a home. It is changing the way an entire generation plans for the future. Because when someone spends most of their income just maintaining their current life, it becomes very hard to think about bigger goals like buying a home, getting married, having children, or retiring. And that is exactly what makes the housing crisis so concerning. It is not because people do not want a home of their own. It is because for more and more people that dream is becoming something that they have to put off indefinitely. Have you ever thought, if living in America is too expensive, why not move to Europe? Maybe life would be easier there. I understand that way of thinking. When people see home prices rising, rent rising, food prices rising, and financial pressure getting worse, many start thinking that maybe all they need to do is find another place and life will get better. But when you take a broader look, there is something pretty interesting. The grass is not always greener on the other side, because this problem is no longer limited to just one country. From America and the United Kingdom to Portugal and many other countries, more and more people are facing the same question. How can you build a stable life when basic expenses just keep going up? One of the clearest signs is that young people are living with their parents longer. In many European countries, it is no longer unusual for someone who is 25, 28, or even over 30 to still live with their family. In Macedonia, for example, many people may live with their parents until they are 30 or even older. Of course, family culture is different in every place, but behind that is also a very clear reality. Buying a home and living independently are becoming much harder when incomes are not rising fast enough. Portugal is another good example. The country was once seen by many people as an affordable place to live, and it attracted many foreigners who wanted to settle there. But in recent years, home prices and rents in major cities like Lisbon have risen sharply, while the average wages of many workers remain fairly limited. As a result, many young people who already have jobs still have to delay moving out of their family homes. Even the United Kingdom, one of the world's leading developed economies, has not escaped this problem. In cities like London, home prices are so high that many young people have to rent for longer, live with roommates, or continue living with their parents to save money. And perhaps the most surprising example is Norway. When people think of Norway, they usually picture a wealthy country with strong social benefits and a high standard of living. But even there, people still complain about the pressure of rising costs. Housing is expensive, food is expensive, and services are expensive. A meal out or a few glasses of beer can make many people think twice before spending the money. This shows that the issue is not simply whether a country is rich or poor. What matters more is whether costs are rising faster than people can adjust. America may have its own problems with housing, healthcare, and debt. But when you look at the bigger picture, this is becoming a shared problem around the world. A new generation is facing the reality that things once considered normal, like buying a home, starting a family, or building a stable life, are becoming much harder. And maybe the biggest question is no longer where is the best place to live. It is how many places are left where an ordinary worker can truly feel financially secure. After everything we have looked at together, one thing is pretty clear. The rising cost of living does not just affect a few small expenses in everyday life, it is affecting almost every major decision people make. What to eat today, whether to rent or buy a home, whether to replace the car, whether there is enough money to pay the utility bills, whether it is possible to save for retirement, or even whether to have children. Choices that used to seem completely normal have now become financial calculations that many people have to think through carefully. And this is no longer just an American story. From Europe to many other developed countries, more and more people are feeling the same pressure. I want to hear what you think. How are you dealing with the rising cost of a living? What have you had to change in your own life? And how much longer do you think this situation will last? Leave a comment because your story may be very similar to what a lot of other people are going through.